Very good evening. आप सबको नमस्कार. Today we are going to discuss about very important topic, that is fundamental rights. And this topic is very important for political science students and those who are preparing for any competitive examinations. And this topic is very relevant and very important. And it is one of the important part of Indian constitutions. And especially for class 11 students, political science subject, your textbook part A, and this topic is given in chapter 2. So before discussing on this main topic, that is fundamental rights, and let us try to briefly discuss about the Indian constitutions, the evolution of the Indian constitutions. And as we know that we achieved independence on 15 August 1947, and after that the constitutions of India, it was adopted on 26 November 1949, and these constitutions came into force on 26 January 1950, and we declared India as the sovereign democratic republic state. So now we have our constitutions. And originally, if we talk about the basic structures of Indian constitutions, originally we had 395 articles in Indian constitutions, and part 22 and 8 schedule. Now at present we have more than 448 articles and 25 parts and 12 scheduled in Indian constitutions, and we have more than 100 plus constitutional amendment act passed by Indian Parliament. And the main architecture of the Indian constitutions, that is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he was the drafting chairman of the Indian constitutions, and we call him as the father of Indian constitutions. Now coming to the main topic, that is your fundamental rights, and this topic is very important for every citizens of our state. Okay, so these fundamental rights which are granted by our constitutions, and it protects your basic liberties and freedoms and rights of the citizens, and it is granted by our constitutions provisions. And these fundamental rights are given in part 3, that is part 3 of Indian constitutions, from article 12 to 35 of the Indian constitutions are called as fundamental rights. Now the idea of these fundamental rights are taken from the constitutions of the United States of America, that is the bills of the rights which are provided in the constitutions of the United States of America. And we derive these ideas, and now we enshrine in the constitutions of our country as a fundamental rights. And the why these fundamental rights are called as fundamental? Because these fundamental rights are enforceable in all the states, and it is justiciable in the court of law according to the rule of law. So now any infringement upon our fundamental rights by the legislature, by any executive, so that laws can be declared as null and void by judiciary, by the Supreme Court and High Court of India. That's why these fundamental rights are called as fundamental, and it is the provisions which protect our constitutional rights, our liberty, our freedom, our rights of the citizens. Now, originally we had 7 fundamental rights. Now at present we have only 6 fundamental rights. Now the fundamental rights, that is the right to property, it was the part of our fundamental rights. But by 44th Amendment Act, you must remember, by 44 Constitutional 44 Amendment Act 1978, which removed one of the fundamental rights, that is right to property. Now, right to property is no more a fundamental rights of the citizens, and it was removed from this part 3 of our constitutions, that is fundamental rights. Now this right to property, that is the legal right, article 300A, under article 300A, that is now legal rights, not a fundamental rights. So now at present we have 6 fundamental rights. So you can see here the number 1, what are the types of fundamental rights? The number 1, we have right to equality, that is from article 14 to 18. So we will discuss in the next video, we will discuss in the what this article 14, article 15, article 16, 17, 18 will explain in our next class. Okay, so now we talk about the second classifications of fundamental rights, that is right to freedom, from article 19 to 22. Basically there are 6 freedom under article 19. We have 6 freedoms given by our constitutions, granted by our constitutions, like freedom of speech and expressions, freedom of movement, freedom of settle anywhere, reside, professions and occupations, to assemble peaceful without arms, and all those freedoms and rights are given under this article 19. So we will explain in our coming classes. Okay. Now third one is right against exploitations, that is from article 23 to 24. Now fourth one is right to freedom of religion, that is from article 25 to 28. As we know that our country, and we have a secular state, it means that we don't have a state particular religions. We don't have a state sponsored religions. The people have right to choose any religions. You can practice any religions, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isais, every citizens, all the citizens, they have their own constitutional rights to choose and profess and practice any religions. So that is your fundamental rights under article 25 to 28. So now coming to the fifth one, that is cultural and educational rights, that is given in article 29 and 30. That is your cultural and the educational rights. And now last one is right to constitutional remedies, that is article 32. This right to constitutional remedies, that is one of the important sections of these fundamental rights. And as we know that the father of the Indian constitutions, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he said this article 32 is the heart and the soul of the Indian constitutions. So right to constitutional remedies under article 32 is very important. It protects our fundamental rights. So we'll discuss all these fundamental rights, each and every articles we'll explain in our next class. Now coming to this this topic, these fundamental rights, if we talk about the constitutional and the parliamentary authority of fundamental rights, we have legislatures, we have executive, we have judiciary. There are three organs of the government, that is legislatures, executive and the judiciary. So legislatures, that is the law-making body, our parliament, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and we have a state legislatures. Okay, so by Article 368, that is the power of the parliament to amending the constitutional provisions of our constitutions. So legislatures can amend any provisions of our Indian constitutions, but by Kesavananda Bharati case of 1973, that is very important and historic Kesavananda Bharati case, the judgment of the Supreme Court of India that these fundamental rights are amendable. These fundamental rights are amendable, but these articles, the basic structures of the constitutions, cannot be amended by the parliament. So you must remember this. What are the basic structures of our constitutions? The basic structures of the constitutions means the supremacy of the constitutions.